Welcome to our show. This is going to be terrible. We're three friends hanging out, doing whatever seems interesting at the time. Don't say we didn't warn you. If this is your first time with us, my name is which is Wookiee for Robert.
Hey, this is James.
I'm Nathan, but you don't need to see my identification.
This week, we'll be reviewing Star Wars The Mandalorian on Disney+. This will be a slight departure from our normal review process where we pick a few categories or themes and then review the content based on that. Instead, we'll have an open discussion about whatever we'd like to share in each episode. We'll provide the logline of the episode, who wrote it, who directed it, and then we'll move right into our comments. Podcast protocol dictates, in the interest of time, we limit our thoughts to 5 minutes per episode. To help us keep time, we've enlisted the assistance of everyone's favorite nurse droid, IG-11. At the start of each episode review, IG-11 will begin the countdown, and if we don't complete a review in time, he will self-destruct. This is the way.
This is the way. Chapter 1, The Mandalorian. A Mandalorian bounty hunter takes a tracking job for a client who pays well. Director, Dave Filoni. Written by Jon Favreau. So I like that it easily established within the first 3 minutes how awesome the Mando is at bounty hunting. Yet also later in the episode, it makes sure to show us that he is not perfect via him having to learn to ride the blurg animal mount creature.
I agree with that mostly, but I don't like how they threw in this whole thing where he needs to ride the blurg. It seems unnecessary that they need to use these animals to get to where they're going. They could at least said something like the Niktos have this really advanced radar that picks up any land speeder that gets close, or there's something wrong with the terrain that they can't fly low enough for the ship to be able to clear something, or there's too many crevices that the blurg can easily jump over, but a land speeder couldn't or something. It just seemed unnecessary for me.
Yeah, I don't want to beat a dead blurg, but I do agree with Nathan. It just felt like it slows down the pace a little too much for me in the episode. We were moving so quickly and learning so much, and then it's like, let's stop and take some time to do this cliche. Hero needs to learn this very simple skill thing. So I agree with him. Jumping back closer to the beginning of the episode, I love that we get a cantina. Please give me more cantinas in Star Wars. These scenes are always so great, seeing all the life. The universe feels so lived in when they do this. So I love it. And I love the brute speaking Huttese, taunting the Mando. I thought was a really, really fun scene. And then, of course, ended very badly for them. Anything else you want to share, James?
But yeah, like speaking again at the beginning of the episode, I like that we get this early foreshadowing of the Mando's dislike of droids when he kind of dismisses having a droid little valet driver person and instead goes with a more humanoid person. So we figure out later in the episode or later in the series why he doesn't like droids. So this foreshadowing here is pretty cool.
Yeah, I do like that. And keeping on the theme of droids, we do get a gonk droid saying gonk again in the hallway when he goes to see the client. And I thought that was a fun nod to gonk droids everywhere. I also like that we get Star Wars terms for everything like stink pit and vac tube. I just love when we get these words that are kind of part of this world that we don't normally use in everyday life ourselves. It's always fun. And we get a shout out to Life Day. Give me more Life Day. I know that everybody hates the holiday special, and there's some whispers of them redoing it, but I like a good Life Day reference.
Yeah, and then we've also had this interesting new wrinkle for this particular tribe of Mandalorian culture that, as far as we know, as far as I know, we've never seen before, in that they can't remove their helmets around other living beings. And it definitely makes it easy for them to just sub in stuntmen for any particularly crazy stunts, but it also gets a good challenge, acting challenge for Pedro Pascal to have to convey his thoughts and emotions of the character through just the helmet.
And
and I thought he did a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly that even though he had a helmet on the entire time except for one frame or one shot later on in the season, like I never felt like I lost anything by watching his performance through a helmet. He still conveyed everything through his stance and his hand motions and his head tilts that it was brilliant. So perfect.
And his voice too. There's a lot of acting there in the voice, and it comes out really great, especially with one of my favorite moments from the episode being I can bring you in warm or I can bring you in cold. And it just comes, that line was just right there in the books of quotable Star Wars moments.
And
Um,
last thing, just got to give a quick shout out to the marketing team for Mandalorian. It had to have been really tough keeping the secret of Baby Yoda slash the child all the way up into the premiere. They did not let that leak. Like I did not hear anything about that leading up to the premiere of the episode. So and it kind of cost them money. Like there were stories about like that Christmas there being a shortage of any kind of child toys and memorabilia and stuff because they had to keep this secret even from the people that would produce said items. So I don't know. Good job on them.
and a nice twist too. It's very unexpected. You're thinking this target that he has to get is going to be some criminal, right? That's done some horrible things. So you're expecting to run into someone like that guy in the beginning of the cantina that is taunting him in Huttese, and instead we get a cute little Baby Yoda that no one will ever forget ever.
Baby Yoda, baby Yoda.
Chapter 2, The Child. Having tracked down his quarry, the Mandalorian must now contend with thieving bandits. Director, Rick Famuyiwa. Written by Jon Favreau. So right off the bat, we are shown why in Empire Strikes Back, Darth Vader makes a point to tell Boba Fett no disintegrations. The Mandalorian in this episode heavily blows some people up here.
Up goes the Jawa. I did like this.
Speaking of Jawas, like who knew that a group of Jawas could put up such a fight? Like scaling that sandcrawler, that thing gave me some flashbacks of playing the old Super Nintendo Star Wars video game where you pretty much had a level where you're doing the same type of thing.
It also reminds me a lot of Indiana Jones too, and the tank scene. Very reminiscent of that. I do love that, again, we're getting this. The Mandalorian is not a complete badass. He's not perfect, and there are people that can defeat him. Especially because he's kind of distraught, right? His ship was just pulled apart. Like, how is he supposed to get off of this planet? So I did like that very much. Any thoughts, Nathan?
Same vein, just that he can't always be the badass that he wants to and just badass his way through a situation. He needs to sit down and talk sometimes, and just he's not in charge of everything in his world, and that he's able to be flexible and kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah, you get that a lot in the whole like aggressive negotiations with the Jawas. That he's kind of has to sit down, put down his weapons, and listen to these guys make demands, even though they're the ones that tore his ship apart. So I thought that was a neat and funny scene too. Oh, do you understand this? Was pretty funny there. And so jumping after that, we do get the scene with the Mudhorn, which I thought was good too. Again, we're getting this more, the Mando cannot beat everything. And I mean, it is a pretty big, indestructible beast. So I thought that scene was pretty neat. It does raise the stakes. You do kind of worry for Mando there for a little bit because he is kind of getting the crap beat out of him. And then Baby Yoda saves the day. Hello, he's force sensitive.
Yeah, of course, the freaking child has to have force powers. I almost would have preferred if the series didn't have anything to do with the Force or Jedi, because we kind of get a lot of that in just the regular Skywalker saga movies. I would have preferred just a more like, hey, we're going to focus on the scum and villainy of the Outer Rim. Honestly, though, overall in the series, it kind of works out fine in the end.
Yeah,
I would say they did a great job downplaying that they don't overuse the child's force abilities. It's only in extreme situations, which can kind of be a bit of a writing crutch and kind of can get annoying. But I never really felt that way with it because it's only, I think, 3 or 4 times that he does that. So it's like once every other episode. It's not like in Smallville where they use kryptonite for every episode to make sure that Clark Kent can't save the day right away and create conflict. So I think, yes, a universe without the Force would have been great and cool to see, but I think they did a great job incorporating it, but keeping it on the down low.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how would kryptonite do anything to Clark Kent? Like, Superman maybe, but like Clark Kent's just this reporter. He's got glasses.
Yeah, man.
You
He's
don't
got
see
glasses.
Superman with glasses.
I wouldn't. Would you, Nathan?
Yes.
I mean, he does deal toot, so a toot dealer would hit a guy with glasses, I think. If I had a nitpick in this episode, it would be the scene where they fix the ship They seemingly fix it overnight. I mean, a team of a sandcrawler full of Jawas dismantled it in pieces while he was gone. It definitely looks like it's not gonna fly. I mean, one of the engines even looks like it's almost completely taken apart. But an Ugnaught and a Mandalorian, and I'm sure the Mandalorian has some repairing skill, but it didn't feel weird to have them fix it in one night that way. Now that night could be 24 hours for all we know. Planets have different day lengths after all, but to us, it feels like overnight, and I didn't really care for that too much.
I think that was supposed to be more comment on I forget the guy's name, the Ugnaughts name.
Queel.
Queel, whatever. I think that's supposed to be more comment on his ability with being able to fix things than anything. But it would have been nice if they recognized that, like Mandalorian saying, I thought that would take a week for me to repair. And Queelo's like, nope, that's what you do with the strength of your hands or something like that. So they could have done it better, obviously. But I think it was supposed to be, showing how he's a good repairman.
Yeah. He has spoken. Chapter 3, The Sin. The battered Mandalorian returns to his client for his reward, but some deals don't end neatly. Director, Deborah Chow. Written by Jon Favreau. So we get a cool little Easter egg / callback here. The Beskar container that the client uses is the same type of an ice cream machine notoriously seen by a background character in Cloud City during The Empire Strikes Back. And I thought that was kind of neat.
We also get a name for it too. It's called a Camtono. I do like some of the stuff we get here when we meet the armorer again, where we get some more of that talk about foundlings and how foundlings are the future. We get our "This Is the Way" debut, talking about some
future.
Talking about the creed and this promise that they have all made for their clan or their tribe. And some pretty neat lore building there that I can't wait for them to explore even deeper. We now know why he hates droids, right? In this episode, we get the flashback when the armorer is preparing some more armor after he delivers that Camtomo full of Beskar. And we see that he was attacked or his family was killed by a droid. And so now we've kind of got this connection about why he doesn't like droids. So I do like that we finally get an answer to that. One of my favorite moments of this episode, really the whole ending part of the episode, the rescuing of the child. He gets a change of heart, goes back, rescues the child. I love that whole fight to get out of the building and then being cornered by the guild. And that scene where you see the pulse rifle pop out from behind the crate, and you just know some shit's about to go down.
Yeah, circling back to the whole foundling talk, it kind of works because, like Robert said, we get the flashes back to Mando's time as a child, and it kind of helps us understand why he might feel sympathy for the child and a need to kind of protect it, even if it means that to protect it, he's going to have to storm the Imperial hideout, kind of ruin his reputation with the Bounty Hunters Guild, and force the other members of his tribe out of hiding and having to go on the run, which seems like a lot for him to have to do. But he has this sympathy for the child who he probably sees as a foundling himself.
Yeah, I do like how that we see that change kind of happening where you see him, we're doing the flashback and you can tell that, again, going back to the fact that he can emote when we can't even see his face, you kind of see that change of heart taking place, and all we're seeing is a helmet staring into the camera kind of deal. So there's just more great things about this show. Other favorite moments for me, Mando party at the end. Everybody shows up to help save the day. I just like how they all come in. It was super cool. It doesn't look like any of them take any damage. They just lay it down and lay waste to the guild, just showing how powerful the Mandalorians are, especially when they work together. And then at the very end, where we get the shot of the other Mandalorian flying with his jetpack next to the Razor Crest, and we get another quotable moment from the Mandalorian where he says, "I got to get me one of those." Any other thoughts, guys?
Yes, I am dumb because of all the talk with the battle droids from episodes 1, 2, and 3, and then all the video games and everything. I totally spaced that battle droids are droids, and I never caught that that's why he didn't like droids, was the battle droid attacking him until you guys mentioned. I'm like, oh yeah, battle droids are droids. Of course he wouldn't like droids because he was attacked by a battle droid. So I am dumb.
Wait, a battle droid's a droid?
I know it sounds dumb, but I am dumb, and I literally just during this take realized that's why he doesn't like droids.
Man, what are we gonna do with
And-
this guy?
And you've seen this show all the way through at least twice now.
Twice, yeah. I'm dumb. I'm special.
I don't know what we're gonna do about you, man. Hold on, I'm gonna go get my pulse rifle.
All right.
Well, I guess one last thing. Kind of really liked those kick-ass whistling birds, you know? Those little like seeking, not missiles necessarily, but like, I don't know, whatever you want to call them. They were pretty cool using them against the stormtroopers. At first, it kind of felt like maybe he should have saved some for his final fight, but didn't ultimately matter because we had the other Mandalorians show up not long afterwards. So, I don't know. I just kind of liked the aesthetic for these weapons. Chapter 4, Sanctuary. The Mandalorian teams up with an ex-soldier to protect a village from raiders. Director, Bryce Dallas Howard. Written by Jon Favreau. So, first off, this episode is an obvious homage to Akira Kurosawa's film Seven Samurai from 1954. Not that that's a bad thing. It's really interesting because Lucas has kind of admitted that he had a lot of influence by Kurosawa's films. And then we get direct references again in an episode of The Clone Wars where we get kind of the same plot. A bunch of mercenaries come in to help save a village from outside raiders. So I don't know. I guess this is maybe just a Star Wars thing. People behind Star Wars kind of like it. So whatever.
Yeah, I had that in my notes too. It doesn't bother me. It in terms of like it being used, it gets used a lot in Hollywoods and movie storylines, but I see it as a Star Wars thing. So if they continue to rehash that in different shows, it doesn't bug me. It feels like one of those things that should be there, like cantinas, which we get another one of in this episode. More cantinas, please. So I like in the beginning of the episode, we get the Mando kind of being playful with the child, or he says, "You little wombat," or "You little womp rat." I thought that was pretty funny. And man, shout out to the team working on the child, on the CG, on the puppeteering. Every time he's in the scene, he just steals it. And it's not necessarily just because he's cute or funny, but just because he's done so darn well.
And by stealing it, you actually mean he steals the little like cockpit knob bits.
That too. Some of my favorite moments from this episode, the fight between Cara and Mando is really, really good. And then you just get that perfect, they stop and they look over and there's the child just kind of like, I'm here whenever you guys are done. Sip.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course. If you're going to cast ex-MMA fighter Gina Carano, of course you're going to give her a kick-ass, hand-to-hand fight scenes. That way they can show off her skills.
She's so good at it too, man. Any thoughts, Nathan?
Going back to the whole Seven Samurai plot thing, it is kind of a theme that kind of recurs throughout all Star Wars material. So it belonged in there, and they did a great job, moving into a 45-minute segment. It kind of ties back to the whole, it's better to be a warrior and a gardener than a gardener and a warrior kind of deal. That's kind of what is always thrown out, that you have these super warriors going throughout the galaxy, but they're ultimately fighting for peace, or at least for fighting to stop. So it was a great choice on their part to include that and to do some sort of homage to it.
Yeah. Moving along the episode.
Speaking of homages or shout outs, really like seeing that Loth cat there in the cantina.
Yeah.
Shout out to Star Wars Rebels.
Great series. Watch it if you haven't. I do love the Jurassic Park parallels, a la Bryce Dallas Howard directing, because she stars in Jurassic Park, or Jurassic World. Jurassic World, or being more specific. But I love the parallels. You know, we get the footprint of the ATST in the mud when they're trying to track down who's attacking the village. When it first was revealed, we kind of get it coming out of the shadows, and we get the big red eyes, and it even growls like a dinosaur in one moment too, which I thought was really good. I think Bryce nailed it in this episode. It is one of my favorites. I did enjoy that very much.
Yeah, they definitely made the ATST feel kind of like a monster. Like I really liked those bright red, kind of like demon eyes for the cockpit there. Really effective.
And even with like the motions it has when they set that trap for it, and it kind of like gets on the edge, and then it kind of like looks down at it like, you trying to trick me? Like the puppeteering for that as well, or CGI, however they decided to animate it, it looks like it's alive and not just being piloted by two people or something like that. So great job on it.
Yeah. We get a little bit more of the talk of the creed, right? Not removing the helmet. He gets asked, you know, how long he's been wearing it. We found out that he's been wearing it since he's been a child and has never removed it. So definitely interested in learning why that is even more, since he would keep it on and never remove it since he was a child.
Seriously though, he takes it off to eat. That's fine. He didn't even like really go very far away to eat. He sets that on a window. Chapter 5, The Gunslinger. On a desert planet, the Mandalorian helps a rookie bounty hunter who is in over his head. Directed by Dave Filoni, written by Dave Filoni. So we got a twofer. So we get so many nods to the original Star Wars A New Hope here. We revisit Tatooine. Behind the scenes, we eventually find out that they use the same kind of panning shot when you're going from space down to the planet. It's the same shot we see of the Tantive 4 in A New Hope. And we also get Mos Eisley and Cantina, the Mos Eisley Cantina. We get some Tusken Raiders, just etc. and so on. So many nods to the original movie.
And I loved it. I think when it first initially came out, a lot of people were screaming fan service. But this is one of those moments where, like, I mean, this is when fan service is done well. Like, it has been so long since we got those shots of Tatooine. And I know the idea was like, we're back at Tatooine again. Why do we keep going back there? Hello, the whole thing started there. That's like home for Star Wars, really. So I love this, that Dave brought us back home and made it feel so familiar, but the world has changed. We get heads or helmets on spikes, you know, showing us that this Tatooine is not the same Tatooine that we visited back in A New Hope. And so I like it. I didn't feel it was fan servicing in a bad way.
I mean, to be fair, the fan service would not be overboard until we get Mando in a metal bikini.
I don't know if I.
You're welcome for that visual image there in your head now.
Moving on to get that out of my head. Can someone tell the rookie to get out of Han's seat? Probably the only bit of fan service I didn't care for. But I think that was the point. It was to show us this guy is not to be trusted. You do not want to like this guy. At least that's how it came across for me. Seeing him sit in Han's place, it was like, you don't deserve to be on equal footing with this guy. Go away. Any thoughts, Nathan?
Yeah. I can understand that thought. I kind of like the whole, like, they try to present him as a Han Solo clone with him ultimately failing, showing that this is a difficult universe to live in. Like, you can't just go out and play cowboy and be successful, because there's going to be a bigger fish. There's going to be someone who's more skillful, and you have to, you can't just do the same thing over and over again, I guess, which is kind of like the whole setup with the Sheen. I can't explain it very well. I liked it because, as Robert said, you don't like the guy because he looks like he's trying to be Han Solo, but that's the whole point to it.
Yeah, honestly, my personal opinion, I did not like this young gunslinger guy. I know they're making a point of he's just starting out, so he's way too cocky and everything. And it makes it easier for the end of the episode for us to kind of, as an audience, hate the character or dislike him. It was maybe a little overplayed, honestly.
I mean, he touched the child, and anyone bad who touches the child dies. They need to die. I think I would have wanted a little bit more of Fennec Shan. She seemed like such an interesting, mysterious character. So to see her kind of just show up and kind of one up Mando and the gunslinger, and they kind of have to team up and coordinate to beat her, and then to just ultimately have her die at the hands of this lame gunslinger, just kind of, felt like a waste of a character. I mean, we do get, that little end scene where a mysterious figure, maybe it's Boba Fett, maybe not, is coming up to her dead body. So maybe she isn't dead. I would like to see more of her, so I'm hoping not.
Yeah, I really love that they got Ming-Na Wen to play her, because she, has done a lot of badass roles in the past. So kudos for another badass fighter on this show. Really liked her as Agent Melinda May on Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And she just continues that badass streak here. And like Robert said, hopefully tease at the end of the episode means maybe she's still alive. Maybe we'll get to see her in season 2 or later. Who knows? It'd be really cool if they bring her back.
Yeah, I hope so. Before the timer expires here, other things that I liked. Dewbacks. We got a dewback. Really neat looking dewback. Oh no!
Chapter 6, The Prisoner. The Mandalorian joins a crew of mercenaries on a dangerous mission to spring a convict from a prison ship. Director, Rick Famuyiwa. Story by Christopher Yost. Teleplay by Rick Famuyiwa and Christopher Yost. So I guess this is going to be heist movie homage time.
I love it.
It was nice.
Mm-hmm. Give it to me. I mean, there are certain things that I didn't like in the episode, but overall, I love a good heist. And we got Bill Burr, like one of my favorite comedians, and he plays a part very well. He's the guy that carries all the guns, bald guy,
Gotcha.
who also touches Baby Yoda and then pretends to drop him, stopping the hearts of the entire world, and then actually drops him. Kill this mofo right now, please.
My celebrity call out was Richard Ayoade playing the droid on this episode. I know he's probably most famous for IT Crowd, which is a fantastic show, great comedy. And I didn't even realize at first. Jessica was like, "Is that Moss?" And I saw him. I go, "That is Moss." So yeah.
Anything?
Yeah, I guess we're gonna call out some of these people in the heist guest stars. It's like, man, even at 60 years old, we've got Clancy Brown here playing a Deveronian named Berg. Mm-hmm. He can still be really freaking intimidating at his age. Like, I know a lot of it is probably just the heavy prosthetic and makeup work, but just the way he's got his voice. He had played the animated Lex Luthor back in a Superman cartoon. He just got this gravelly kind of voice, and it really worked well.
Yeah, I think this is also a good chance to just say that overall in The Mandalorian, the casting choices are fantastic. I don't think there's a single casting choice I had a problem with. Everybody seemed to fit their roles really, really well. Though I did not care for the Star Wars Twi'lek Harley Quinn type character that we get. I didn't care for her too much. Those characters in general I don't really like. And this just felt a little too over the top for me in that character.
Well, I would agree that I don't like the character. I think they casted the character well. I think the performance of the character was done very well.
Yeah. We get some Razor Crest backstory, kind of. We hear that it's off the New Republic and Imperial radar. We get some other information that they're surprised it survived being impounded during Imperial rule. So I'm really curious to learn more about what makes the Razor Crest so special. I thought that was neat. Some standout moments from me here. They taunt the Mando because he won't take off his helmet, asking him if he's a Gungan. But specifically, Bill Burr is like, Yusa don't want to show your face?
Mhm.
And he kind of does a Gungan impression, which I found pretty hilarious. And then going along with the whole Mando doesn't like droids, we get to see him kick some serious droid butt in a really, really cool fight sequence that was shot ridiculously well. Kudos to Rick for nailing this episode. Like, it just all looks and feels so good. And the when he hunts down everybody, of course they betray him, but then seeing him hunt them down one by one in the dark was really, really, really cool.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. You mentioned the droids. So the whole premise of this heist is, other than the prisoners on the ship that they're gonna go look for, everybody on the ship is, it's supposed to be just manned by droids. Yet all of a sudden they go into one like little control room or whatever, and there's one lone New Republic trooper in there, and it kind of gives us a chance to see that, Mando's creed and how he's, tries to be honorable, versus the rest of the crew are just like, oh yeah, no, we want to kill him. And it's like, hey, hello there, Matt Latner, voice of Anakin Skywalker on the Clone Wars, and now you're dead. Still a neat cameo though.
Yes, I thought it was a very, very neat cameo to see him there. I didn't catch it the very first time that I saw it, but then when I heard it, I went back. I was like, it is Matt Lanter. That is so cool that they threw a little Easter egg in there. I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, it kind of pairs well with, I didn't realize it at first until it's pointed out later also. At the end, we've got 3 X-Wing pilots.
And they're the
I want to say,
directors.
yeah, we got 3. Chapter 7, The Reckoning. An old contact extends an invitation to the Mandalorian to make peace with his enemies. Director Deborah Chow. Written by Jon Favreau. So, I gotta admit, I wasn't expecting to see IG-11 return after being shot in the head in the first episode. On the other hand, nice seeing him back, but I don't think we needed this kind of like montage showing his recovery and reprogramming. It's like, we're getting this close up to the finale. Kind of maybe could have saved those few minutes for something else.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to see though that, Quill spent the time not just like rebuilding him, but teaching him to be, to nurse and protect, and care for people and not hunt them down and kill them. I mean, there's still some of that, and we'll see that in the next episode, but showing that was necessary to convey his primary function has been changed. But I get it. We're getting down to the wire here, and it is a lot of time to spend on something that could have just been done maybe through exposition, but Star Wars has never been big on exposition. So, it's one of those, either way if it's exposition bad, wasted time bad. So I do like that we're getting the gang back together. We kind of start leaving people behind. We leave Quill behind, we leave Kara behind as we're moving through the episodes, and I like these characters. I love them. I want to see them. I wanted to see a team up. So I'm glad to see them teaming up before he goes back to Navarro, because what clearly is a trap, he's going to need some help to spring. So they get back to Navarro, right? And I love how Karga touches the baby. And so I've been saying since the beginning, if you touch the baby and you're a bad guy, you're dead. And so he touches the baby and you're waiting for that moment. And of course, as luck would have it, he also says, nothing can go wrong, and everything goes wrong. And we get that wonderful scene where he gets hit and he's about to die and he's lamenting how this is the end. And the child reaches out to what we know will be to heal him. And we get he's trying to eat me, which was completely absurd, but just absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, quick fun fact. This episode premiered a few days before The Rise of Skywalker. So the child using, a kind of form of force healing, it sort of acted as an introduction to when we later see it in the Rise of Skywalker being used by Rey. So that was kind of neat. But also talking about the child for a second again. So it looks like he has access to both the Force choke. Earlier in the episode, we see Mando and Cara Dune kind of arm wrestling, and the child is like, oh no, this looks bad. And, goes to Force Choker. So he's got access to both that and the healing ability, which are powers that would typically draw from opposite sides of the Force. Not that it's unheard of for a Jedi to kind of channel dark side powers, but it's hard to say, like, if maybe this is just because of the child is so relatively young, or maybe he'll end up being some sort of like neutral Force user.
Any thoughts, Nathan?
I mean, my theories and thoughts on the Force is that the Force is one, there is no two sides, but that's another story. So I don't have much to add. You clarified a point that Jane said that I was going to say, but you've covered it perfectly. So
cool. So they get confronted, or they go to the client, which still doesn't get a name, but I love, again, great casting choice, Werner Herzog. Every line from this guy's mouth is like pure gold. It's like that meme with Pacha from Emperor's New Groove, just doing everything this guy says is just great. And then he dies.
Yeah.
And I cried.
So it turns out, I guess the client isn't the big bad. Like, I'm not going to complain. Kind of swapping out Werner Herzog for Giancarlo Esposito. That's a good trade right there. I'll take it.
Giancarlo plays all the best villains. I am convinced that he could never play a good guy because he's just so damn good at being bad. And his reveal coming in on that TIE Outlander and just emerging from the TIE is just, again, wonderful.
I need to look at, I guess, kind of like, I don't know, the specs of this new TIE fighter or something, because like, other than like Chapter 8, Redemption, the Mandalorian and his allies come to know their true enemy, who already knows much about them. Director Taika Waititi, written by Jon Favreau. So first off, backing up to the previous episode real quick, we didn't get time to mention it, but poor Quill, rest in peace, man. Died at the end of the last episode. Anyway, so this episode is really kind of rare, but I kind of agree with the collective internet for once. So we see some scout troopers. They kind of abuse the child. And yeah, they definitely get what they deserve for doing that. Bad scout troopers, bad. Although, as amusing as we kind of like get a joke about stormtroopers never hitting anything with their blasters, we probably didn't need to devote as much time to this, given that this is the season finale. We got a whole lot of other stuff going on. Could have cut that out and added something else.
I thought it did nicely, though, honestly.
I still would have liked the blaster stuff. Maybe they could have cut some of the dialogue. There is some bit where they're going on about Moff Gideon having killed some of their own or whatever, and they're kind of going back over that, and he's like, didn't you just hear me say that he killed some of his own people or whatever? And that would have saved a good 30 to 45 seconds of runtime, but the blaster thing needed to be in there. It was just too damn funny to cut out. But I do agree. We're in the finale. This is the last episode. There's just so much going on and so much to unpack that we could save some time here. But it was a great way to open the episode.
Unpacking like an E-Web blaster.
I do like that we get a good E-Web, a nice reference to a weapon that I think is the first time we actually hear the name used that way in Star Wars canon. Because I think largely it's been mostly like a fan name of the weapon, like, or in reference material. It hasn't actually been said in any of the movies or the shows. So it's really cool to hear Moff Gideon give us kind of a history of the E-Web and how, it cut down rebel shock troopers descending on planets that they were raiding, and how that you can see it like be unnerving to Kara in that moment. And also, he knows a lot about our heroes, like way more. Now, they do reveal that he was part of the ISB, so he would have access to a lot of that information, but still, like, wow, like he knows a lot enough that he's super intimidating. Again, Giancarlo Esposito, man, just killing it as the villain. Just killing it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate them shouting out the ISB, because I know at least Nathan and I read a lot about them in the previous Legends canon, and they were a big deal. Like, you did not want to get on their bad side.
It was like the Gestapo.
Pretty
Oof.
much.
Yeah. I did like we get so they're kind of cornered in this cantina. More cantina. It's like more cowbell for Star Wars. That's Star Wars is more cowbell is more cantina.
Okay,
Um,
admittedly, we've already seen this cantina previously, though. So
sure, but still more cantina. In the cantina, I love how Grief Karga steals a drink, kind of like, well, this is probably the end. Might as well, go out with a bang. Um, and then when IG-11, spoiler alert, saves the day, saves the child, and then brings him to the cantina, we get this really nice, cool fight scene, blasters and everything. But I made a note here because I like how as he's whizzing past, he kills two stormtroopers looking through some parts that a Jawa is selling. And you got to feel for the guy, man. Like, he's probably just about to make a sale. Clients are thin on Navarro now since the Imperials took over. And it's like, how am I supposed to sell my junk now, man?
I don't know. I didn't maybe read it that like they were going to make a sale there. Like I just assumed the stormtrooper was kind of harassing them because they're
That's all.
Jawas.
Maybe, maybe. We do get after the scene where they have all the fighting and everything. Mando gets injured, and he's inside and sends the rest of them away. We also get a cool scene with the child stopping a wall of flame and throwing it back at the flame trooper. I thought that was really cool. Pretty neat to see again him using his powers. Oh crap! We're coming up on time. Speaking of fire, no, don't self-destruct. Okay, good. We've got more time because there's just too much in this finale for us to get cut off. So, thank you for your service, IG-11. Spoiler
Yeah,
alert,
like
he
we
dies.
haven't even mentioned like we get the full flashback sequence now to all the super battle droids attacking the Mando, who we actually also get his name, Din Djarin. No, the D is silent. Din Djarin. Sorry. But anyway, we get the full flashback sequence now, which was really nice. Definitely fleshes out the hatred of droids thing for sure now. And then I really found it interesting. It looked like the Mandalorians that saved him were actually a part of the Death Watch, who were villains on the Clone Wars series.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what kind of wrinkle that might add in the future.
We'll see, for sure. So in this flashback, he's injured fatally or mortally wounded. Sorry, mortally wounded by Moff Gideon with a blaster bolt to the back of the neck. They pull him in. The child stops the fire. He sends them on their way so they can escape. And we get a scene here right after that flashback of IG-11 trying to save Mando's life, but he needs to remove the helmet to do it, but won't. And I think this speaks a lot to, again, the creed that the promise or dedication he's made is more important than even his life. And Nathan, you even had some thoughts about how this relates to the charge he gets later on with the child from the armorer.
Oh yeah, because later on they meet up with the armor again, and she's like, you're basically this child's father until the child comes of age, or you return it to its people. Um, and so it was a bit of a defining moment, a turning moment for the Mandalorian, in that he was willing to give up his life to protect his creed because he understood that he couldn't show his face to any living creature. But now it's what's superseding that is the fact that he has to take care of this child now. And so it just the whole season rather, leads up to this whole him growing and becoming more than a bounty hunter, him becoming this protector. And it's a really nice, this is the absolute defining moment where he is no longer just a bounty hunter. He is now essentially a father. And so that was really cool how they set that up with the armor correcting him, saying, you took the creed, you can't show your face, of course, we all know this, but you have to take care of this child now.
And going back to the living thing comment that you made, there's our loophole for IG-11 to be able to save Mando's life, and we get to see his face, Pedro Pascal's face, anyway. And I find this like, is this a really good loophole? Like, if the other Mandos found out that he took off his helmet in front of a droid, would that count? Like, the Mando says living thing. So I'm assuming that it would be okay. Maybe this might come back to bite him in some way, maybe not. But I do like this whole, he doesn't like droids and he's going to have to trust this droid in order to be able to survive and continue on with his mission. And we get to a funny bit here, where he's saying you've suffered damage to your central processing unit. And he's like, you mean my brain? He's like, that was a joke. It was meant to make you feel better. And I was like, I love Taika Waititi, man. Like, just perfect humor, man. I love that part.
I do want to comment a little bit further in the whole trusting a droid with his life. Yes, he's trusting a droid with his life, but more importantly, he's trusting the droid's interpretation of the creed he took on himself, that the droid's interpretation is correct and will allow him to keep doing what he needs to do. And I think that's the bigger point to make, other than the fact that he's trusting a droid with his life.
Yeah.
I don't know. The bigger point that we definitely do not have the time or expertise to go into here is like, sure, we've got this loophole about a droid not being a living thing, but at what point maybe does sentience in an AI actually become a thing, a living thing? But we're not going to go into it here because I don't know.
Regardless of the answer to that question, though, IG-11's dead, so doesn't matter.
So anyway, speaking of the armor, it was really nice to see that she survived. We kind of get a little tease from her about what hopefully we might see in season 2. And then she gets a kind of a really badass fight scene. It's like it's freaking hammer time right there. It was a lot more brutal than I was expecting it to be. I mean, I know it's stormtroopers, so they can get away with a lot more. We see chunks of armor flying off, which if it was, chunks of body, I don't think we'd see that happening on Disney. But the one thing that really surprised me, and it was a real quick shot, we see one of the stormtroopers just being flipped and tossed over into the forge, the active forge. It's like, oh, that guy's gonna melt. That's gonna be hard to scrape off.
Yeah, that kind of reminded me of the scene in The Last Jedi where the Praetorian Guard gets tossed into some kind of pit thing and then he explodes and you see bits of armor fly everywhere. It reminded me a lot of that, like, whoa, Disney actually put that in there? So after our fight scene with the armor, we get down into these lava tunnels where they hope to escape, and we get probably the swollest R2 unit we've ever seen. Kind of humorous, but also creepy at the same time, just because of how tall he stands. An R2 unit with actual arms and legs is very, very weird and unsettling. We get
it was an interesting design though, but yeah, it did not need so many limbs and appendages there. That was weird.
We get Kara using a assault rifle while also holding the child at the same time. Hello, nurse. That was a great moment there, kind of showing off her badass mom skills, kind of. Hoping to see her more active too, and kind of working with the child there. We get Mando changing his heart about droids, not just in the scene because IG-11 saves his life, but IG-11 goes to sacrifice his own life because they're not going to make it out of the tunnel alive unless he does. And we get Mando is actually sad that IG-11 will die. We get confirmation of that because IG says that he scanned him and, scanned his emotions and analyzed them, and it says that he is sad. So it's a really interesting change interesting character development for the Mando to not just trust this droid, right? He just trusted his interpretation of the creed, as Nathan said, but actually feel sad that he is going to die to save their life. But, ultimately it is needed. But I did have a note here. How did IG know that the river wasn't like 8 feet deep? He just kind of jumps in, and I guess we're lucky that it's pretty shallow, because could you imagine if he jumped in and then just immediately sank all the way down? It would have been like, oh.
It's just one of those things you don't need to think about. Just assume he's got plenty of sensors in him. He knows. But sure. Yeah, he walks through the lava and he goes and blows up about a dozen or so stormtroopers. So he's dead.
I think
At
they
least
say
he
it
went
in the
out.
movie.
At least he went out with a bang.
No, no, I'm not giving you that one. I'm sad that he died, and I will not let you make a joke out of his death. After he gets out, we get a really cool aerial battle between Mando and Moff Gideon, which I thought was pretty cool. Mando's not necessarily super trained very well with the jetpack at that moment, and I just love how it's a quick take off, turn around, and then grapple hook the tie. Was a pretty neat maneuver. Again, he's not perfect. He drops the first bomb, which I thought was really neat because, again, the stakes just continue to rise. The tension is boiling up, and you're like, is he going to be able to stop the Moff? And ultimately, he does, and we get the Darksaber, the mother freaking Darksaber, opening up a whole world of possibilities and so many questions. How did he get it? Where did he get it? What happened to Bo-Katan? Is she alive? What does it mean for the Mandalorians if Moff has the Darksaber? Because in Rebels, we learned that the Darksaber is essentially a symbol for the leader of the Mandalorians. And what does that mean in Moff's possession? Like, this was just like Baby Yoda, like the child being revealed at the end of episode 1, completely out of nowhere and so welcome and surprising.
I mean,
Any thoughts
it's not completely out of nowhere, given that we learned earlier in the episode that he was, one of the people, he was the ISB agent who was responsible for a purge on Mandalore. So it would make sense that, hey, I'm going to purge these people. I'm going to steal some of their cultural artifacts. Yoink.
It was something that Thrawn did a lot in Rebels too.
I was just going to say that.
Art.
I want to point out the whole the stakes rising during the whole aerial battle between Mandalore and the Moff, and the fact that you can clearly see the charges on his belt. He drops the first one. There's a quick shot of his belt. You can clearly see there's only 2 left, and he grabs both, and it's like, oh man, if he drops it again, he's got nothing. So please get it on there. And having said that, it was a really cool scene. I feel like there seems to be this necessity in media to have the ultimate protagonist, the ultimate antagonist, to have a face-off for their final battle, and I don't feel that's really necessary. And the fact that you had to have the Mandalore, like, essentially face-to-face with the Moff while he's flying in air, while it was really cool, it was unnecessary. Like, they didn't really need to have them have a face-off like that. There are multiple ways to add tension without them being on the same level, so to speak. And I gotta go, Star Trek Next Generation does a great job of portraying like a face-off without them being even in the same ship with each other. And I think that could have been done a little bit better first one.
How dare you bring Star Trek into this Star Wars episode? IG-11, you can self-destruct now.
Ah!
So now that we've covered every chapter of The Mandalorian, we'll share our concluding thoughts on the overall season and show. And I'll kick it off with the music. The music throughout the show has been incredible. From episode 1, when we get essentially the Mandalorian theme song, which has been my ringtone since the debut of that episode. And we even get little versions of that, like in the Sanctuary, we get kind of like a piano-ish, xylophone, lullaby, baby version, soft version of that same theme. Just the music has been phenomenal in this season.
Yeah, I really like that score from Ludwig Göransson. It has a heavy hint of Western in it at times, and it really enforces kind of like the Mando being a lone gunman on his own in the Outer Rim. And then it's also got some sort of like, I don't know, techno sort of beats to it. Not a type, but it's really nice.
Yeah. I like that it's not, it doesn't sound like the traditional Star Wars musical score that we are used to. I think about like the Clone Wars, right? the Clone Wars had a lot of music in there that was very uncharacteristic of the usual scores we hear in the movies, in the episodic films. But still feels like it belongs in that universe. And so they just nailed the music in this show. I loved it. I love the aesthetic. The look of the show has been great. It matches so well. I think, the biggest gripes of things like the prequels and the sequel trilogy is that, it doesn't feel like the original trilogy did. The world doesn't look the same. And we get a lot of that here in Mandalorian. The look is just perfect. And yes, we're visiting some familiar places like Tatooine. And we see a lot of the same droids and the same species, but we do get a lot of new stuff too. And it's so great because I feel like I am at home watching this show. I am getting more of the original Star Wars that we have come to love.
Yeah, part of that might be like, I think earlier I mentioned in episode 5, they do so much to kind of recreate the same kind of panning shot that we see in the original A New Hope. And also we get a lot of practical effects work in this series. So it kind of gives it more like a lived in feel. And they do that a little bit in the sequel trilogy. Kind of disagree with you there. They do a lot of practical effects there as well, but it gives it a more of a kind of lived in feel. Everything like feels like it'd be like grimy and gritty to the touch, as opposed to the prequel trilogy where so much CGI. It's like everything's made of plastic and it's a bunch of toys. So really like the practical effects.
The concept art at the end of every episode is really neat too. It's really cool to see. One, just from an artwork perspective, it looks amazing. A lot of the shots shared and the concept art ended up being wallpapers that I would rock on my computer or my phone for a while because they just looked so great. And I like how they were all concept art for elements that were used in the episode. And you got to see like, oh yeah, I remember that scene, but you see also the differences in how they tweak some things, how they maybe went in a slightly different direction. But ultimately, you see how these ideas were born into this artwork and then brought into film. And it just looks so cool. I also had that note written down that the concept art is just amazing.
Yeah, you kind of get like these alternate looks at some of the characters. Like the concept art version of Cara Dune has like, I think like a weird blue or purple hair, but like other than that, she still kind of looks the same. But it's interesting to see how they all look different.
So how do we all feel about the show in general? What's our overall assessment, Nathan?
Overall assessment, this has been such a wonderful example of show don't tell, because so many times you get TV shows or movies where there's just tons of dialogue, tons of expositions, tons of, okay, audience, this is what's going on and here's why it's going on. But this, like with all the flashbacks that the Mandalorian goes through when he's watching his armor get made, and then later on as he's telling stories, you're seeing what happened to him, and you get a little bit more as you watch more and more of the season. And I still can't get over that so many directors and screenwriters and everything like that, they don't seem to understand that you are making a movie, you're making a TV show that is meant to be viewed, not talked to, not talked at or whatever. So the entire season, I just kind of sat there and I got to experience it. I feel the way that the directors really wanted it to be experienced, and not like they were just doing an audiobook or something like that.
James?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the show. I think this is my 2.5 time watching through it. So if I had any kind of slight nitpick for it, I would have liked it to have been a bit more clear what planets were being featured. So I know in the original trilogy, they don't, they only really have to deal with maybe like 2 to 3 planets in each movie. But even then, like, it doesn't take very long for them to spell out like, oh, we're going to Tatooine or we're on Hoth. Like sometimes it'll even be in the opening crawl. And so we'll kind of get it laid out. It's like, oh, Luke is going to the Dagobah system, etc. and so on. So, but here it's like, I don't think we even get Navarro name dropped until episode 7, which chapter 7. So it's like, I don't know. I know I think it was in Rogue One, they started to like show in the bottom of the screen a kind of like whenever we'd go to a new planet, laying out, like what the name of the planet is that they're going to. So something like that I kind of might have liked, just so like we wouldn't have to rely on, okay, go into Wikipedia to find out what planet is this. It's one of those, like in the original trilogy, since they didn't have as many planets to deal with, it also unfortunately led to like, okay, we have the symptom of each planet being like the ice planet, the desert planet, the almost a single binome planet. And now that it's a much larger universe that we're seeing, be it in more movies or live action series or even the Clone Wars, it's like, it'd be nice to know where we are. It's like on episode 4, Sanctuary, they're going to like a little fishing planet, and all we see is like a bunch of like forest and woods. Okay. It's obviously not the moon of Endor, but could it have been? Maybe. We've got an ATST. The point being, I like to have a little ground footing of knowing where we are. That's it. Other than that, I like this show. I like the show.
My concluding thoughts on this show are that it's absolutely incredible. This is Star Wars. This is exactly what I think every fan dreams of when we hear that there is a Star Wars TV show. And don't get me wrong, the animated shows are fantastic. I love Clone Wars. The final season recently came out, and it was absolutely incredible, and I love all those characters. And Rebels is great too.
Man, yeah. How about that Resistance?
It was okay.
I don't know, actually,
but this is the show that every Star Wars fan dreams of, and it exceeded all of my expectations, at least. This was my 4th time watching the entire series. I can't get enough of it. It has been fantastic, and I am super excited for season 2. Before we jump into Terrible Times, a quick note about season 2. Our format for the show will change slightly. We're going to veer from our normal bi-weekly schedule so that we can cover each episode in a post-debut review as each episode comes out. Since season 2 will run until mid to late December, our normal schedule will resume after the new year. So starting with the release of season 2 of The Mandalorian on October 30th, we will have a post-debut review each weekend after the episode airs. So please join us for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. We might even do it live.
Yeah, basically, this is going to go on hiatus for a little while till the new year. But please feel free to join us for our little mini series of reviews for Mandalorian season 2. Electric Boogaloo.
So let's move on to Terrible Times. This is a segment where we just quickly share some of the things that are going on in our lives, or things that we are experiencing or into, watching, reading, playing, this week or in between episodes. So I'll kick it off. The Boys season 2 that I have been sharing each Terrible Time since we started this segment is still a fantastic show, and the finale debuted just this past Friday, and it was a amazing finale. If you have not checked out that show, now you can see the whole thing from front to back, and each episode is only about an hour long, so you could almost get through it in a day if you binged watched the whole thing. And then The Right Stuff just released on Disney Plus this past Friday as well. The Right Stuff is based on the book The Right Stuff, a book that I had to read for a space exploration class or space history class that I took in college, and I loved the book, and so glad to see a show being made of it. It's not really, like accurate history-wise representation of the Mercury project, but it's kind of like a dramatization of the event. So not everything is going to be obviously completely true, but it is based on real-life characters and real-life events. And the first 2 episodes released on Friday, and it is fantastic. I am looking forward to more episodes, so check that out as well.
Yeah, so for me, I'm just going to talk briefly about Star Wars thing, oddly coincidental. There was a new video game that was released on October 2nd, Star Wars Squadrons, published by Electronic Arts and developed by Motive Studios. So this is as you can probably tell by the title, Squadrons, it is a flight simulation type game. It sort of tries to bridge a gap between the more like super arcadey version that we got in Star Wars Battlefront 2, and then the 90s Star Wars flight simulator games, which were heavily like you needed to map out a lot of different keys to be able to play those type of games, which was fine because they were good. So this is very faithful to those older games while also updating it for a more modern audience. And it's got a lot of call outs to those original type of games. The first mission has a couple direct call outs to the TIE Fighter game from the 90s. It's a prologue mission, so it's trying to teach you the game, how to use your controls and stuff, and you're having to scan a bunch of ships. And a very particular type of ship, don't really recall the name, but it's just a very unassuming, very blocky. It's not very visually appealing. However, it's the same type of ships that in the original TIE Fighter game in its first mission that you would also scan in that game to have it teach you how to play the game. So I thought that was a really cool little callback. So Squadrons has both a single player campaign. It's not very long, maybe like between 8 to 10 hours, depending on the difficulty you're playing on. And it has online multiplayer. And the cool thing is it only costs $40 instead of the usual $60, and there's no microtransactions. You basically just earn any of your in-game, like, skins or avatar type stuff just by playing. You don't have to put any other money into it unless you want to go all out and get a VR rig because, hey, you can play the game in VR, and that's probably pretty neat, but it's not for me because I don't have that kind of money. Anyway, yeah. Nathan, what you got?
So I was actually very busy with work this week, so I rewatched The Mandalorian season 1.
Yeah, I know. We've kind of been talking about it for, I don't know, the last hour.
I also slept poorly.
So that wraps up.
So that was
our
a terrible
show.
time?
It was a terrible time, yes.
I agree. So that wraps up our show for today. Which is Wookiee for the Force will be with you always.
I know.
Be good to each other out there. Move along. Move along. I guess in the meantime, we must duel. Can't hit you. I yield.